Now, someone listened to the last episode. Of course, there's always people that have problems with what you say. They said, well, 1% non-Westerners, isn't that a little bit extreme? And I thought to myself, no, actually it's not. For it to be considered a Western Buddhist monastery, 1% for exchange students and other things of that nature, it's not too little or too much. Now, I do understand that there are, for example, Tibetan monasteries that have a whole bunch of Tibetans in it, and they might have the reverse of that rule, where they'll allow 1% of Westerners in as exchange students and things like that, which is understandable. But as far as having an entire Tibetan outfit in a Western zone, that is a little bit odd unless there's good reasons for it. Now, I wouldn't call India Western at this point. Although ancient India was, maybe it will revert back to Westernism in the coming centuries if things change dramatically. But potentially there could be a Western Buddhist monastery in different places, just like there's different Tibetan outfits. But the same rules should apply. So this is a Western Buddhist monastery in this geographical location that is called XYZ, or might not be Western. But for whatever reason, there's a Western monastery there. Now, this is the other thing. People like to scale things up and say, oh God, a monastery. Here's a guy, he's thinking of Shaolin, like Bodhidharma, right? But no, monasteries can be very small. It can be 10 people. It can be 5 people. It can be 3 people. At what point does it become go from a wat to a monastery, from a camp or a settlement to something larger? And as discussed in the last teaching, is that maybe being too big is not a good thing. Maybe that is making yourself a target, and maybe it's not sustainable at this time. Maybe it's too inflexible. But again, things change. Just like in ancient India, there were good kings and bad kings. There were kings where conditions were favorable, and then there was times when in the same places things became unfavorable and just changing forms and conditions, and so you have to be able to adapt. And then again, just because I said Westerners, yeah, that's just one indication. Yeah, for it to be a Western Buddhist outfit, you need 99% Westerners. But those Westerners, you have to watch out that they're not degenerates or hybrid operators or ideologically compromised kind of snitches and stooges that Binoism is all about in post-Bolshevik or tolerated by despotic classes at this time kind of Binoism. So that takes even a further level of refinement, and unfortunately these things have to be discussed because they are in play, and so not to discuss them would be to pretend like they're not existing, and that would be sort of delusional, wouldn't it? Now, the great thing about the roots of Buddhism, it started, I wouldn't say started with one man, but it actually sort of did. But he started within the Samana tradition. And the Samana, these are individual monks, non-affiliated, independent. And so that tradition is there, that root is very deep, and essentially it's all about the individual practitioner. I think that's what Western Buddhism can affirm, and can also develop on that tradition. However, it can scale up if the conditions for it are fortunate. And if the lay people understand how valuable it is and protect it from the type of hybrid attacks, undermining, subversions, etc. that are in play at this time, but might not be in play in the future. And I really do hope that they're not in play in the future, or not as much as today. Because like I said, the covert subversive Western version of the left, ridiculous term, was mostly psychological and sociological and covert. We're just really cool, nice people, and we don't want there to be any intolerance, and we're just going to do these little inversions and put some Buddhist sprinkling on top, and don't make any fuss about it, otherwise we'll make you look like the bad guy. And then you get excluded from all these nice people that are really into this nice Buddhism that isn't really Buddhism, but has all these other, maybe 50% Buddhism and 50% destructive sociological or political kinds of things that have no business being in the room in the first place. But don't be intolerant, man. We're all about niceness and double plus niceness, and don't be the meanie type of operators. So yeah, out of a despotic training school or university, because again, they want pliable, naive, dumb people in their system, and they want to be calling the shots, whatever those shots might be, for a indeterminate amount of time. The less people they have that are independent and not under their control, the more they have to worry. They just did the math. That might mean 15 years less of riding out on the backs of whoever it is that they ride out on as a financial industry. How did they get wealthy again? Well, it's just numbers here and there. Look, it's magic. Poof. Here today, gone tomorrow. They're worried about that. So, understandable for them, for practical reasons, as they see it, but it's not very practical for Buddhist institutions. Or again, we could probably just get away from that term and just call it practice or synthesis. A synthesis that takes political realities, sociological realities, economic realities, historical realities into account, and react to them in a way that they might not consider favorable to them as a first or second statist, but that's not the business that practice should be in. Now, on the other hand, it's not wise to go on a confrontational course unnecessarily, but a course of avoidance is not a course of confrontation, now is it? And we can see how they operate, we can see their method of, for example, saying that they're not doing the things that they're doing and then doing those things anyway, kind of thing. And we can reject that. We can laugh at that. We can boo them out of whatever it is we're putting together. But of course, yeah, they want to be in on it. So how people go about organizing under conditions like these are up to individual practitioners, and they will have good or bad success depending on where they are. And if they have some type of spy or snitch or stooge, even as an exchange student, they're going to have to deal with that on a case-by-case basis and adapt accordingly. Maybe it will have to be longer periods of evaluation. Like in ancient Buddha, ancient India, if you showed up at a Samana's mountain peak, the chances of you being nefarious, and even if you were, first off, were very low, like near zero, but I'm sure it did happen. Like ask the Tibetan monks or Thai monks why their eyebrows are shaved. Why do they shave their eyebrows in Thailand but not in other Buddhist countries? Why? Well, we're living in a worldly realm. So they adapted, and the size of monasteries can adapt. And then, of course, the dispersion aspect can adapt. You hearing this on the other end of the planet, that wasn't possible in the 5th century BC. Now it's possible. So are you here? Are you not here? Were you here? Were you not here? Can you take what's useful and leave what is not? Perhaps what I'm describing is not happening in your area. Perhaps it will not happen in your area. Perhaps it hasn't been established in your area. Perhaps if it has, it will go away in the next 2 months. All the people, there'll be an earthquake and all their buildings will collapse upon them. And this whole teaching will be obsolete. Perhaps it will come back in 20 years. After having gone away, perhaps it will never come back. So it could be historically dated. And it's also something I don't like to over-focus about, because what does that have to do with the practice other than avoiding, in some cases, annoying things that are a part of our environmental landscape as a variable at this time, that we would be so undermined with these covert kinds of activities of niceness, right? Niceness by not so nicely nice people that think they're being nice but really aren't nice. And there hasn't been a lot of niceness for a long time, but that's sort of how they started off, and they aren't really adapting all that much. Although I don't know how, again, they pull it off in places like China, for example. But maybe it's just censorship in that case, or monopolizing the entire institution in that case, and not providing any alternatives or access to alternative information. Is that how they do it? I don't know. Somebody will have to tell me that isn't a robot, that isn't going to show up and dispute what I just said. No, you don't know what you're talking about. That's so funny. These types of people do exist. Like, if you really know something, like you've reached expert status, which isn't easy, by the way, but then they'll come as pseudo-experts, and then they'll also be confrontational. They'll challenge your narrative. You see them. They do exist. These are cultural war criminals, essentially. And some of them are aware of what they're doing, and some of them are the useful idiot variety. They just learned, it's not true, it's not happening. we learned that people say that that's happening and that they're the bad people. And you're saying that? I thought you were smart. That's how they work. It's unbelievable. It's mind-boggling. You don't want to be a dumb person, do you? Well, what if I'm not a dumb person? What if I'm the expert and you're not? Oh, no, that can't be true. Didn't you know? I'm a professor at a very serious university, and I have very serious friends, very serious networks, and I have very serious money and very serious trust funds. So I'm the expert. You're just the madman. Oh, okay. Really? We're going to revert back to the D class A classism kind of card pulling that they do if they start losing arguments, if they feel like their expert status is slipping away. Is that what they do? Oh, they do that too? Who are these people? Well, yeah, there they are. You don't need to know them, but just being able to spot them is really all you need to do at this point. And like I said, confrontational, what's the point? They have their karma, they have their destiny, they have their habituated circuitous directionality, and from my point of view, that doesn't look like it's going to be leading to anywhere good for them. But that's just my opinion. Just like different samanas, like, right? There was samana 541 on peak 32, and he saw things that way. And he had people that listened to him, and the other ones, in the king's court, they had to say different things, and they had different followers, and their followers had different results. And that's just the way it is. And being a teacher, you don't need to have followers. Like, these are people that are in the game because they want followers, or because they want a hierarchy, or they're into that hierarchy. They're in the educational system, etc., and so forth. These are power people. Samanas, that's not what they were about. But unfortunately, it's sort of the nature of the beast, because people, that's how people operate. There's that social component, and it's either working for you in the cases like Achan Cha, where he went into the jungle and people didn't drive him from his location, but rather supported him, although not all of them. I recently heard a very interesting story about Achan Cha that, there's all types of gangsters in his area. Now, look, I don't want to say all types. There was at least one gangster that thought Achan Cha was full of crap and made it known. And also made it known that he didn't like him. He thought he was silly. And that he shouldn't mess with his business, otherwise maybe something would happen to him. His nickname was Ghost of the Rat or something like that. This is this dimension. I hope some people are smiling right now, because could you imagine the type of ridiculous conversations he had with that personage, who thought himself to be very important and scary in the place that Achan Cha happened to be. Imagine if he decided to pull some type of card on Achan Cha, say, hey, you know what, this guy, I'm too paranoid. Can't have this guy out here in the jungle because, I'm worried about this or that. Would we be talking about Achan Cha right now? Probably not. So this is just this dimension. And I can only imagine what the karma of that Ghost of the Rat would have been had he made such a foolish decision. But look, the Buddha talked about this in his millions of lives that he went through. One of them, he got chopped up by bandits. So how we die or exit this dimension, it's unpredictable and in many cases undesirable because there are undesirable elements here. But if we talk about undesirable elements, then we're talking about aversion. So what part of training is that? It's just about randomness, changing forms and conditions at the end of the day, isn't it? And how we deal with that, skillfully or unskillfully. I like this skillful option of moving. Like Ajahn Chah, he didn't set up shop in Bangkok. He already knew that wasn't the place for him. But where he is now might not be the skillful place. He might not start off there where he started off because the place has changed. It's become modern, right? The people are totally different there. Now, I'm not going to say they're hostile there, but who knows what influences are there. We do know that Ajahn Chah is no longer with us, so how has that changed? And yet he's still with us because his teachings are still with us. Does that mean I don't respect the Thai school because I've put some requirements on Western Buddhism at this time? Well, that is for the listener to decide. Coming back to the point, people should not be offended by the things that I say. And if they are, that is their problem. Perhaps they're looking at it the wrong way. I think we should all have we all have valid concerns regarding these teachings or teachings, how things are taught, where they're taught, in what way, what is a more effective practice for the individual practitioner. I think those are real concerns that are concerning, and if you get them right, you will get better results. Finally, this is non-confrontational. It's an assessment, realistic and in many cases gut-wrenchingly disappointing assessment of pre-existing conditions for historical reasons. But it's also something that shouldn't be exaggerated or blown out of proportion. It's probably possible that you can go to these places even if they're run by people who have made political compromises that have massive amounts of negative karma associated with them, at least individually. And you can still benefit from not being a part of that and yet still being within their presence or in the presence of people that are essentially doing things the wrong way for the wrong reasons. And when has that never been the case? And who is it for you to say that? Maybe it's just the appearance of that. But that might be delusional. And then in that case, you could be wrong. And you could also be libelous if you say, well, I have identified here someone is doing this. And in fact, they're just appearing to do that, but are actually not that. Would you be doing them a service or a disservice by saying that they're doing the thing that you claim that they're doing when they're not doing that? So don't try to be Sherlock Holmes to a fault, to an extreme extent, because you run the risk of being wrong. And yet, finally, if you put too much, let's say, emphasis on externalities and external teachers, then where is your internal practice? That is where it matters the most. which is also something that people should realize if they ever get into this thinking that all is lost or everything else like that. No. It is a new day. There's new conditions. You wanted to go to the beach? Maybe it's raining furiously. You might have to delay that. Oh, but I want this, I want that, I want the perfect preconditions. I want the perfect teacher, I want the perfect practice. I want. Well, what is that? Is that a dissatisfaction machine? Yes or no? If that is a dissatisfaction machine, what is skillful about that? So finally, I think we can also leave, in many cases, especially when we're talking to lay people or people in a Western context, we can just leave the whole Buddhist terminology out of it and reinvent the terms to be more impactful, such as practicing or synthesis of ideas and a practical philosophy. Practicing practical philosophy with synthesis that leads to better conduct, but conduct in a psychological sense. So let's say authentic conduct that is both practical and good for the practitioner, but good in a psychological, spiritual sense. I think putting the focus there or the weight there is helpful because we can't prove it in a materialist sense. In many cases, this type of practice could lead to things like poverty because you're in a system that does not approve of ethical conduct, or it's impossible to interact in their system ethically at a certain amount of time or under certain conditions, and so you abstain from it. Well, where is your proof that your practice and conduct is better than theirs? You see how you can get into that type of sophist kind of argumentation, which you can only lose. So just don't do that. It's an interior practice. It is an interior journey, and it doesn't have to have external justifications for its efficacy. However, don't fool yourself. If your practice is not getting you results and you know it and you have to know it, if you don't know it, if you're in denial, you have to break through that. Then be honest with yourself at least. If this practice is not getting you the results, if it is not alleviating the three poisons, for example, anger is one of them. Anger, then you need to change your practice. You need to adapt it. Maybe the adaptation will look this way one day or 1 hour, and it will look a different way the next hour. Here's a good practice. If you're laying on your back on a hard floor, you can lift both your hands up in front of you and you can hold it there. Look, that's like a micro austerity. Hold it there for, you think, oh, this is easy, this is too light. Well, hold it there for 5 minutes, and if you think that's too easy, do it for 10. And if that's too easy, do it for an hour. But if it becomes too much, then put them down. But then you decide when you put them down. You decide when it's too much. My idea is you only put it down when one of the three poisons has abated. Once your anger has abated, you can put them down. But you don't put them down until that's happened. If it's fear, same thing. If it's doubt, same thing. That's just one practice. Maybe you have to do that and raise one leg in unison because it's that type of powerful energy, psychic energy that you need to overcome. But look at that, with those two combined, 5 minutes of practice that way, if that's what it takes to abate it, look at that miraculous cure. No drugs needed. Oh, but wait a second, something else has arisen, and then you take a different position, different stress position. Perhaps you need to revert to your stomach, and you need to revert to a bridge, and you hold that for 3 minutes. But then you become physically exhausted, you fall back down, but then you revert to the breath practice. You see? Subtle adaptation and micro austerities. That is the practice. And this is a good 3 a.m. practice, but it's also a good before sleeping practice. You can also combine it with the cane practice. I have sometimes a cane. I will hold on to the cane, and I've lost consciousness doing this sometimes, and I've regained consciousness, and I found my hand still holding on to the cane. That's very good practice. Because, of course, one of the ideals is to reach a level of non-thinking conduct. And directed stubbornness. Look how stubborn your mind is creating the poisons. Well, this is a different type of stubbornness that you are bringing into being with your practice, by practicing it, even while not thinking. Having lost consciousness, my spirit knew what was important. And so it did not abandon the task, even though my consciousness did. That is right conduct. That is right effort. Now, some might say that this criticism is too much, and where does it come from, and whatnot. Well, you could classify it as just a combination of conceit, wrong views, shamelessness, and recklessness in this modern time. Now, if you think that's being pulled from somewhere other than the Pali, then you could see it as a combination of mana, Ari, Kam, Ano, Michaditi, Udhakam, Arikam, and Anato Apan, or Anatap Pam, Anatopam. Or for just normal people, recklessness, shamelessness, wrong views, and conceit. So those are just constants in this dimension, whether they're applied to binos at this time or just unskillful practitioners. So some people were like, oh, that was pretty funny with the body snatchers metaphor. I don't think it's funny. I think it's pretty terrifying. But to make it less terrifying and more practical, you can just say that these global despots that are the financial industry essentially, and the personalities behind it that you probably don't know about because, journalism doesn't cover those people. They're considered beyond discussion. The culture they produce, sort of a neo-slavery model that is sort of a corporate robot model that you buy into, that you're shaped into, that you're captured into, and you don't question. And they deliver you the morality, and you just go along with that in a 1984 fashion and push out the bad people that they say are bad people. And like I said, I think it's mostly a female model. It's modeled around them. And the very effeminate, brutish, dopey, sadistic, sadomasochistic kind of men that will cater to women no matter what, mostly at least. Sort of the bully, the dumb bully, and a know-it-all, snippy, sort of, I got accredited by some bamboozled institution, so you better get in line, otherwise I'm gonna complain type of personality type. And that's I would say it's not American. So any European, snide Canadian, Australian, any other Westerner, that's not American. That's globalist. And with the globalist culture, there's also a blobist contingent of administrators and political hacks and journalists in name only that shill and cover for the First Estate. Oh, First Estate, that's too complicated. Look it up, people. That's to the French Revolution, First and Second Estate. So what would be a technocratic Second Estate? That's what we have. First Estate is financial people, the funny number people, the alternative reality people. Stuck in the past memory war kind of people. The Western civilization was terrible for all the wrong reasons. Now we're moral kind of mind benders. So it's a global plantation with globalists and blobists, and that has nothing to do with Americans, Americanism, or the West at all. So that's just the way to see it. Now, people that have bought into it, just think of them as globalists. They can be the same inane nothings, like eggplant kind of people. Anywhere in the world, they show up in Lisbon, there they are, globists. They're not Portuguese. Show up in Boston, globists. They're not Americans. Like I said, they have an anti-national, anti-nativist, anti-regional kind of bent to them, although they will profess it in some cases. Like if it's a farmer's market, oh yeah, regional, but that's regional only in a materialistic sense. Who actually did the work and what culture was behind that eludes globalists and materialists. The main thing, it came within 50 miles or kilometers, because then the carbon footprint is reduced. But whether it was imported slaves from Bangladesh or the native peoples, it doesn't interest them at all. That would be wrong thing to put those types of parameters into the discussion. If they could, by golly, do it cheaper than the people that were living there for tens of thousands of years, well, I guess they just got steamrolled over by the tougher, more efficient faction. Good for them. Ho ho ho. Doesn't matter if it's like the crap they're eating is poisonous and cheap and a flimsy imitation. They pride themselves on those other metrics. So, yeah, globalists are just sort of not even real people. They're people out of a can. And it's really, really, really unfortunate. And it is a war crime. I think wherever it's being propagated, the people doing it and the people behind them are committing cultural war crimes. There's cultural war, there's cultural war crimes, and there's cultural war criminals, and that's what they are. But they like to be in a power position to flip it on anyone that would shine the light on them. So this is the type of inane game we're involved in this transitional period where they've made like inroads into every place that was worth sort of a damn in the West, and now want to just dominate it with cultural jamming. So yeah, any venue that is playing globalist music in a globalist way, it's usually way louder than it needs to be, so you can't really talk because the function is jamming. The function is not having a good time or socializing. See, that's what most people would think. Well, this is socializing according to them, but it's sort of set up so that that's impossible because it's so annoying. But again, if you complain about that, there's something wrong with you. You're so sensitive, right? This isn't happening. Gaslight. Gaslight. Sensitive people, who needs them? We need people that are on board. So it's super disappointing. It's very maniacal. It's essentially social pollution carried out in a distributed, organized way with a bunch of people complicit in it. Like corporate pollution, cultural pollution, corporate cultural pollution. Just like the HR people made sure all the crappy people, the jammers, came into the cultural institutions and got set up in them. Yeah, that is what they did. That's what they're doing, and that's what they plan on doing because that's what they're paid to do, and they have marching orders, and they really feel like they're on the right side of history, and they do have material benefits for being complicit, being, how do they put it, being collaborators. Yeah, so there's a sabotage program, and the collaborators, cultural collaborators. And yeah, you can demographically profile them. Like, for example, they don't belong to the region or the culture, and they're in some type of sociologically determinant position. Yeah, they're jamming, whether they want to admit it or not. Scientists could just define them that way. Here we are. Here's 5 people who think they're doing the right thing, but they're jamming the culture in a very sappy way. So, yeah, there they are. What did they do? Oh, deny, 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 attack, attack, attack. Flip, flip, flip. Oh, that's very surprising. No, actually, it's just their method. So, it's very off-putting for real cultural people. It's like, people that are, let's say, into perfume or sensitive as far as fragrances go, and they're the human equivalent of stink bombs that set themselves off and then declare themselves to be, air fresheners. So, terrible, horrible, but it's just a modern version of despotism at scale. And despotism is an old concept, and the financial industry people fit it to a T. There's nothing new about it. It's about suppression, inversion, and jamming for the sake of power politics, because if there's no politics of opposition to speak of, because you've lobotomized or crushed or jammed the people, then it's just a materialist, any type of materialist shell game can continue, including, yeah, just inflation. So you have your blobbist, you make sure that their salaries keep up with inflation, and anybody doing like meaningful, genuine work that's not connected to their blob network gets impoverished and put out of business, and whatever they had goes into bankruptcy, and that just sort of continues until you reach a Cuban-like situation. Now, some people say, "Oh, well, look at China." Blah, blah, blah. Well, the only reason they had their rise was they were able to rip off the West and get away with it. But once the rotting out process in the West reaches Cuban levels, there'll be nothing to steal. And then they'll just have whatever they ripped off when they were able to rip it off. And okay, maybe they're able to make a few tinkering improvements here and there. But with that type of government, those types of people, what type of deals are going to have to be made to make sure some type of goods get somewhere? And then essentially they have a monopoly position. So who's going to play ball with them again and who won't? And why will that happen? You could just look at Africa. Then it'll be Africa in the West with a bunch of albino bipeds instead of the darker versions of that. And Cubans, let's not forget, they were very accomplished colonists, Spanish colonists. So, try to survive as just someone with primitive technology back when they did and settled the country and set it up. Those were capable people, genetically at least, the part of them that did settle the country. Now, to the extent that they set up plantationism, yeah, that was doomed to failure, but they never thought that they would be socially inverted. So, there's that. But they had capable people there. It doesn't matter. Capable people either are conformist, and the blob is essentially maybe maximum 3%, maybe 3 to 5% of the population. And the rest of the people just get thrown in the dump. You're a genius, not a conformist, sensitive person. They don't need you. You're dangerous. Maybe they'll throw you in jail or whatever you're trying to do, they'll pull the plug on it with different explanations that don't make any sense. And they figure they'll be able to afford themselves whatever it is that they need, and they're not looking out for the big picture or the big strategy, or most people, even if they say they are. It's just a line, that's a slogan. Like the Russian model. Yeah, we're all in this together. Power to the people. But it turned out party members, and now that's not even party members. It's just people affiliated with the security services. And a couple of hand-me-downs from that. So it's reduced. And then it's just, okay, power. So, okay, who's got the guns and who doesn't, and who regulated them out of circulation, and finally that's it. Who's got the security company? Maybe they'll import security forces from some other place if they need to. All the men died of alcoholism at like 40. Okay. Where there's still some men somewhere we can pay with oil well money to guard our haciendas or dachas. Okay, let's pay those. We're on the top of the financial game. We'll have somebody take care of it for us, some Western collaborator, some broker in the West that understands our model, or even if they don't, they're willing to take our money. They'll have that check cleared for them. So it's not a really long-term strategy. It's sort of short-term. It's an amoral strategy, and it's a disingenuous strategy. So that's a lot of bad things coming together that works for them. And yeah, culture, anything that could be potentially political or unifying, they're against that. They'll buy whatever culture it is that they want to have, and they're not super cultured people to begin with, so what do they care? They might have a couple of myths about themselves. They might have their own religion and own way of doing things. They don't really care about other people at all, uh, per the monopolist model. So, do they want competition around? Of course not. Even two bodegas or two taco stands that are even not even better than them are taking away business from them. So it's not like they're going to be on anybody's side but their own. And that's just the way you need to see it. So how you can survive in times like these and see the people that are pretending to be one thing and actually are another thing, that's completely up to you. And the only reason why they're not in every nook and cranny of all of Western civilization is just logistics. They haven't been able to penetrate into the interior yet. But if you look at a lot of the big cities where they already have diminishing returns, that's sort of the ground zero of the putrefaction process that they unleash anywhere they or their agents, collaborators, or sycophants set up shop. But okay, what can young people do? Well, look, young people, you're going to have to just look away from any type of sociological structures or hierarchies that could be considered sociologically relevant, because that's what they are doing, and they do like to have minders. And so you're just going to have to become more and more independent, and you're going to have to curate things more and more. You can't rely on distributed structures, social networks, you name it. And you're going to have to look at, let's say, a less affluent lifestyle, but there are ways of doing that that aren't morally reprehensible. And in fact, very honorable people were not wealthy, but lived very good lives. But it's probably going to have to be dispersed just because of the nature of hybrid war at this time. But from any genuine seeds, you can grow a forest. So think of it that way. But it's not like in natural environments where you have no predators. There's a predatory class that is in play. But knowing that is half the battle, isn't it? And when I say half the battle, I don't mean that even though you know this now, you're going to win it. But at least if you get blown away or seriously undermined or injured or blocked, then it won't be this big mystery. And when they turn on their gaslighting program, because that's what they do, or victim blaming program, which is another thing they do, then you can sort of compartmentalize that within the context of a hybrid war and see them for the operators that they are, and or useful idiots that have been trained to see things that way. And in that way, you can gain some perspective on the thing. And that, if that's not half the battle, that's at least something that can get you through a series of setbacks or covert attacks or underminings that you otherwise would not have understood or put in the proper context. And I do think that's important, because otherwise it's like them being snipers, just blowing people away by the thousands, and these people not having any adequate explanations for that, or the other two things I mentioned, which make their war crimes all the more reprehensible, doesn't it? So let's not go along with that part of it, shall we? And let's also have a little bit of compassion for all the victims of these nefarious operations, and a little bit more understanding. For example, should you have family members that have been undermined this way, or if you know artists or other sensitive people, then perhaps you can do a few things for them, even if they've been deemed to be enemies of the despotic class and treated as such. Perhaps other people can see them differently in the context of the times that we live. And as for globalists, yeah, see them. They're just a different population group. These are people, they might look like you, they might come from the same location as you, but they're not like you. They're not you. They'll say things, they'll try to appropriate things. I'm this, I'm that, I grew up here, I was here my whole life. That doesn't mean anything. They got the wrong values. That's what they are. They're globalists. They're covert, either useful idiots or they're the real thing. People who are in on it, connected to it, and know exactly what they're doing, including the gaslighting part. And if you think I'm over exaggerating, the Russians have been doing this since 1917. And if you need anybody to ask about that, ask some Ukrainians, like not the fake kind. At least now, some of the Ukrainians know what's up, but a lot of people aren't very interested. They don't get out much. They're listening to TV. Stop watching TV. Things of that nature. So yeah, that's their own problem, isn't it? Like that's what makes a useful idiot useful, and an idiot is being misinformed while thinking they know what they're talking about. So yeah, don't be one of those, because that is not good, comma. And why be used in that way by people that see you that way? Because you are that way if you are that way. Some people are like, well, Cuba, yeah, well, that's sort of old news. What else is new? Okay, look at Mexico, suckers. Mexico is where all of the Trotskyist pukes went when he lost the power struggle with Stalin. Now, don't let anybody tell you that they were even uh, a micrometer better than Stalin. In fact, had they prevailed in that power struggle, who knows how retarded Russia would be today, but it certainly wouldn't be any better. Well, anyway, they boogied on down to Mexico and set up shop there with their psychology and political program and cultural program. And they've been an unknown, sort of undeclared factor in the demise of that country up until this point. And there's a couple funny things happening. First off, the president, and then the incoming president, really strange people by all objective standards. But one of the funny things that came out was that they're going to put all the judiciary spots to Democratic vote, because they're trying to get rid of the corrupt judiciary, because that's another big vector they use, which, again, if we ever have a rollback on these cultural war crimes, the judiciary people, they're the people to look at. So yeah, these people that have unionized themselves into politicized positions outside the democratic process are now going to be put up to vote, but they were protesters. All these unfireable blobists were protesting about that. So that's the drama to watch now. And just realize that these people that got themselves embedded like parasites into the judiciary and made themselves unfireable, they're the people that have had a massive negative impact on that country and the world, because of course it's destabilizing the entire Western Hemisphere, just like Trudeauites are destabilizing the northern border. So we're talking massive criminals on every level, but that they're in the judiciary, that's That's the level of comicalness that we've reached, and it's happening now. So watch them. They're protesting. Like, don't fire us. We're important. We're for law and order in Mexico. Can you believe it? Where cartels run things. It's like a Prigozhinist kind of system there now. Oh no, protest. Don't let us get put up for Democratic vote. It's not like Democratic vote's going to help very much, but maybe it gives them a little bit of a chance, which they haven't had up until now. So massive criminals in the judicial system that have a monopoly, and then, like I said, there's step and fetch it blobbists that want to have jobs that they can never be fired from, while they destroy families, businesses, civil society, and everything from their positions of immunity and impunity. So could that happen anywhere else in the West? Well, it's already happening. It's just by degrees. Look at all this lawfare. European Union lawfare has been big. Some corruption cases, but not even nearly enough pushback. And then, okay, some people don't like Trump, but look how they're coming at him with this legal thing, that legal thing. That's Prigozhinism. So what is that? Neo-Trotskyism, Neo-Mexicanism, Neo-Cubanism, Neo-Bolshevikism, Neo-Blobism. How do you want to define that? So that's where to keep your eyes down. Look at them protesting on the streets. I think, again, the shame factor. These are shameless people on a scale that is this hard to fathom, that they're protesting, given the situation there, and think that somehow they look like the aggrieved party. It's just ludicrous. I wonder if there's going to be like counter protests to their protest, and that whether or not they're going to get messy, because for the Mexicans that have been just totally and utterly destroyed and dispossessed under that regime, I can't imagine that they really take the concerns of lobbyists all that seriously. But again, shamelessness is something that they do know. And shamelessness is really all the way to infinity, and they're pretty close to that. So keep an eye on Mexico. They're messed up beyond repair at this point. And they had a bunch of elitist pricks buy into that model too. So don't just look at the bottom. This is all over the place. But it wouldn't be an episode without a couple of new Pali words. And one Pali word, celebrating our Indo-European free and liberated tradition, is kalesas. Look that one up. Kalesa, there's different definitions of it, but one of them is poison or mind poison. And anger is one of those poisons. And it is so true. If you let these things get you angry, you're poisoning yourself. Now, it's understandable why people would get angry, but it's not skillful to get angry really about anything. No matter how disturbing and hateful and disgusting these modern developments are, and the people behind them that are very real, don't poison yourself with anger. And do look into getting it out of your life. Look at these people. Sometimes I like to provoke anger in order to extinguish it. Like it's you know how they produce anti-venom? Well, they use venom to produce anti-venom. So that's sort of my practice, which some people might consider unskillful. But in order to reach certain superhuman levels of skillfulness, using all different types of methods, also of a specialized, non-traditional way, I have been injecting myself with venom in order to produce anti-venom. Now, don't take this literally, right? Don't take it materially, and don't do that. But it is an old practice. Like old kings, they used to drink poisoned stuff to build up resistant to poison. Now, I think it was stupid in a lot of cases, but see, the metaphor is very real. So, how do you build up antibodies to chalases? Well, this might be a way of doing that. But yeah, those poisons, they're not good for you. Anger is a terrible poison. If you let it poison your life without any antidote, without any skillful measures against it, you will die terribly and horribly. And then it's not just this life. So don't succumb to those poisons, those mind poisons. Envy's another one. Someone wrote in, it's like, I can't believe how smart and brilliant you are. And I hate every second of that because I thought I was smart. But now I know I've essentially been just nothing but the lowest of useful idiots this whole time. And hearing you creates envy. I said, that's a terrible poison. And that's something you have to work on. That's a poison I never really had. I mean, I had it as an adolescent. I mean, it depends, in different instances. The typical thing, like, why does that guy have the most beautiful girl type thing? But looking back, that was really foolish, and it really wasn't the full dose that people can get. Like, envying people for being insightful, that is a terrible poison, and I would say that's subnormal. And that's sort of what these 1984s have on tap, been trained to be. So if you've been trained that way, you've got to untrain yourself. And Kalesas, look into that, do a search and work on it, because that's no way to go through this dimension. This dimension is very fortunate. And the more challenging it is, the more fortunate it is for you, especially if you can manage all of these things in a skillful way. And that's really what adversity was meant to be. It was meant to be overcome skillfully. And if you do that again and again and again, then your life in this dimension was worth something. Do it. Okay, but to end on a positive note, what to do? Well, you need to nationalize the finances, and you need to prosecute financial and cultural war criminals. And then you can see that globalism and blobism, like toxic waste, can be reduced to zero. And that's just what you have to do. And these people, they're shameless. They are covert, they are active, and they are guilty. But right now, there's not even a list with names on them, and there's nobody, no committee or party ready to take that project on. But wherever you are in the world, if you take that on, that will be the end of it. And also the end of the toxification of Western civilization, or wherever the hell you are. If you're in some other third-party country and you set that in motion, then you'll start the process of reestablishing a natural environment, or perhaps even creating the supernormal conditions in the place that you live. And so that's it. That's how to do it. Now, it can collapse in on itself, and you can do that while it's collapsing. You can take a fragmentative strategy. You can do basically anything, right? It's survival at this point. So whatever you need to do. If you can help others, great. If you can't, well, survive, right? Try to move wherever you can. Don't be the whipping person for these forces. There's nothing in it for you except ignominy and a lot of bad karma. Ultimately, I think people, especially people who collaborate, you are going to hell on grease skids. So if you've been doing that, stop doing that and repent. If you haven't started doing that, don't ever start doing that. And if you're thinking about checking out, then check out and reestablish things. And that's just a way forward at this point, which is I would imagine, one of the lowest points in modern history, and it just keeps getting lower. But having a grasp on the variables in play does help one deal with those things a little bit better than just a steady stream of disinformation that people have at their disposal at this time. So God bless you, and fight the good fight, and it's not permanent. And again, Anti-Venom is also one hell of a thing. So if you haven't been producing it, look into that. Here's an app I was thinking about, like how to get a grip on sociological pollution would be people could rate like the level of culture jamming. Like this was a 10. The music was extremely loud. It was off-putting. And a lot of other things were extremely annoying. But everyone was just pretending like that was normal in some type of gray zone. Again, sociological fabrication. But also TV shows and the donors and the backers, financial backers of these TV shows that have all these Western women walking on their hands, flip like that. One of the biggest flips I heard recently was one of them said, yeah, we used to be in a bar and these men would come in, they'd have all these sad stories. And one of these women that was known for being a big mouth and bossy would just tell them to shut up and get on with it and man up or do something like that. They said they didn't want to hear that. Sure, that's real smart, right? What culture was ever based on women telling men that had legitimate concerns that they should just shut the hell up? Didn't have no time for that. More important things going on in their lives, like what was on sale in the supermarket, or who knows what. The dogs were barking last night, and there were 2 hubcaps out in front of their doorstep the other night, or something like that. But men actually taking the time to talk about some of their difficulties and maybe turning on their computer and trying to figure out some things, like maybe giving some constructive suggestions, because like I said, men have blind spots. They always had women supporting them who were more or less dependent on them for their own damn survival. So a lot of the women that were smart, in air quotes, in previous barbaric times were smart for a damn reason. The men didn't figure it out. They starved to death or were given up, thrown up as booty for invading tribes. So women were on board with men. They listened to men when they said something, even men that they weren't hump-a-dump, ding-danging. Men from the community, men from lower strata, all different types of men. They were listening and trying to help them out. Like, oh, you had a heartbreak? Let me be a little bit compassionate and try to figure something out for you. Tell you a few things that might help you instead of some kind of toughen up nonsense that they heard from their TV boxes in 50 different variations. So that, like I said, any type of TV programming, that can be retroactively evaluated. And if it comes out toxic, the people associated with that, they'll just get the rap. Sociological war criminals, SWCs. And that would be life in prison. The millionaire, well, this is a billionaire. You can't do that. This is a billionaire. That billionaire ain't going to be a billionaire after that charge, would he? Those billions, you could just auction it. What has he got in his garage? Here you go, garage sale. Anybody can come and take whatever crap. Hey, look at this. He's got a special, what is it, bicycle. You can ride on it. It's, what is it? One of those stationary bikes to burn off those extra calories. Here you go. Anybody want it? No? Who gives a damn? Okay? But that show will go out of circulation like that. Because let me tell you, those types of ideas aren't helpful. Socially, that's the point. Not individually, not socially. And like I said, these newfound ideas that listening to men is a bad idea, that is ridiculous. That is the stupidest thing I ever heard. And yet you got all these rump-a-dump, shovel-faced kind of women with that chip on their shoulder rolling around this world thinking that way. How long? I wonder. Who needs to have someone like that around? The answer is no one. But on the other hand, they think they're God's gift to creation too. Like there's men that's they're way too good for low class men. What? It's not true at all, is it? These people need to look themselves in the mirror. What do they have to offer? Or nothing but a bad attitude? Gotta be kidding me. It's like people holding on to paper that they bought in 1928, trying to sell it for top price in 1930. That's about how they overestimate their paper holdings, which are technically worthless, or in their case, represent a negative value to anyone they associate with, especially men. Oh, what? Maybe they'll have a job for who knows 3 months, and then look, all of a sudden they were so much more important. Status is through the roof until they get what? Declared redundant for some type of thing that nobody needed in the first place. And then, well, what then? Oh, God, help me. I don't know. Moving back into the garage. So yeah, this is a hybrid war. These are cultural war crimes. This is what they look like. Messed up women. That's a sure sign that you've got sociological terrorists out and about, funded and flowing, distributed in your networks. Just like some type of cyanide in your waterworks. Just do a little probe, like, oh, let me pull this right here. Why all these people die? A scientist, like, oh, put it in my little fancy machine. Oh my God, cyanide levels here are off the charts. That's why. Problem solved. So pay me, right? F you, pay me. Who do I present that bill to? Oh, they're not paying for that. They don't want to know that. That company with the monopoly on the waterworks. What are they going to do with a guy like that? Pay him? Maybe. Pay him to shut up. That's about it. But these people, coming from China and North Korea and Iran and Brazil and who else? South Africa. They're too cheap. They don't actually. Their checks bounce. So they're not looking to pay nobody nothing, not even to shut up. How about that one? Is just going to be a new world according to their propaganda. That's just not really hard to understand what that world's going to look like for most people. But a lot of people don't have 2 and 2 put together, do they? Upstairs, and there's a certain segment of society. I'm not going to point fingers, but yeah, obviously they don't know what they're talking about most of the time. But if you're not one of them, great. You know what? You need to start listening to the men around you. If they got problems, that's serious. Even if it doesn't appear to be serious to you, if you've been trained to think it wasn't serious, it is serious. Your men die out, you're done. And we've already got man deserts. It's a sociological term now. How are they going to bring the men back into some type of radioactive zone? They're trying to figure that one out. But treating them with dignity, civility, and respect, that's not on the table. Not for hybrid war operators and their step and fetch it, useful idiot army. So, but yeah, I was thinking of Mexico again. Look, that anti-venom. Don't look down on that. Anger, you can be angry, but be sure to inject the anti-venom afterwards. Because living with that is no way to live. You're going to put yourself in an early grave. But cultural values, cultural venues, like I said, anybody that has some type of sociological value, they can all be evaluated on the basis of sociological toxicity or ideology or useful idiocy. And if any of those numbers come up high, pull the plug on it. And people who got put on that slow boat to nowhere, you need to paddle back. However you're going to do it. Look in the mirror. Your BMI messed up. That's your first job. Height, sex. There's only two sexes, by the way, male and female. And age. Those are the three variables. Type them in. If you're over that, that's your first job. And the second job is attitude. Where's your focus? If you're a female, it might be on men and how to please them and how to be of benefit and service to a family and a household. Just saying, that's sort of the traditional values. And if you don't know what that looks like, you could go watch Jesus Christ Superstar remember the 1970s version. Anything over that has been wokeified, has been sabotaged and subverted. But the 1970 version, check out Mary Magdalene. How she took care of Jesus. The songs she sung about Jesus, those are the songs that should be in your heart for whatever man you're dealing with at any given moment in time. And try to make it last. Because you might say, well, he was Jesus. Apparently, that was just easy for her to make that decision. But no, at that time, Jesus wasn't known. He was considered to be a loser, a complete waste of time, somebody who wasn't liked by the establishment. And her logical mind wasn't really on board. And the song she sang, that conflictedness is in there. So no, she didn't just knew that she had won the lottery. But in retrospect, she sort of did, didn't she? If we're going to take Christianity as a parameter, which most people don't these days. But in any case, it can be applied to anyone. Check out how she treats him. A nobody, a loser, and a hated person in the society at his time. A little bit. How about the feet rubbing part? How about other people didn't like that part? How about she didn't even understand it, but she did it anyway part? Like I said, that should be required watching at this time. Jesus Christ Superstar. You can download it today. You might have to pirate it. I'm not going to recommend anybody do that because that would be illegal. But there's nowadays easier than ever. If you got to borrow a DVD or copy one and hand them out, then do that. If that's what you need to get back on track, because we're going to need that if we're going to survive. And guess what? It's a good thing if we do. Western civilization, even again, pygmies out of the jungle, they used to know it was worth something, and it was. And it is. And if today people have lost their way, they can find their way back. And that film's just one step on the right road as far as Mary Magdalene goes, and how she comported herself despite her checkered past. And one of the big mouths might pipe up and say, well, listen to what you said about the churches and other sociological groupings that have been targeted in a hybrid war. What are we going to do? Well, it might not be in the church. Get yourself your magic carpet and do your, what was it, 28, or was it 56 bows per day, individual practice to get your minds right, if that's what you need. And a lot of people need more than that, and that's very okay to put in the work to get there. Then that is what you have to do to get there. So do it. Here's the green light. I'm giving you permission to do it. And there's a lot of benefit in Christianity. Like I said, find a Bible that is based on the ancient Greek translation with a modern English equivalent that is academically peer-reviewed, possibly. Read that a couple times a day, or some parts of it. And then you've got the Tripitaka, you've got Dhamma talks, you've got self-talk, you've got yoga, you've got everything. You could burn up your whole day and night with right practice. And a lot of you're going to need that probably for months, just detoxing, to even before anyone of merit would have anything to do with you, including that BMI thing, which, look, if your mind's right, your body's right, most likely. But if your body's messed up, where's your mind? Can't stop yourself from stuffing your face. What the hell use are you to anyone? So get your mind right, get your bodies right, but get your mind right first, and then keep your mind right. And all this modern culture, whatever they say is modern, it isn't. It's barbaric, it's poisonous, it's toxic. It's heading in the wrong direction. So detaching from that is a good thing. Your calendar isn't full, you aren't meeting 40 people a week, great. That is exactly where you should be. You shouldn't be meeting anyone until you get yourself together. And when you meet people, they should be vetted and verified and tested a long time. And if something shows up that they didn't present themselves to be, and you need to be wary about these things, because there's a lot of charlatans out there since forever, then you need to have a very valid concern for yourself and the people around you, and don't become a vector for this gonorrhea of the mind or body, because it is out there and it will eat you up. It will kill you. And other people, they like to put rainbows and everything else on love and all that. Look, you get mixed up with the wrong person, it's a death sentence. Do not take these matters lightly, and certainly not in a time of hybrid war. And that is what we are in. Here's your wake-up call. Now go out there and start practicing, because I want to see some better conduct out of the new generations, whatever's left of them. So let's think for a second about that Mexican anti-venom, but it's really Calesa venom, anti-venom. What is one of the first hindrances, or the first hindrance to healing yourself? Well, that's ignorance. So how about this one? Look at that venom, and then ask yourself, are attachments involved? Is a false self involved? Like the imagination of a self? Yes or no? If so, that's where you need to work. Don't work on the results. We know what anger is. We know it's a venom. We know it's a kilesa. It's a poison of the mind. But those other two things, they're the philosophical principles that if you're aware of and work on, that's where the anti-venom might be produced. And I really do like this comparison. Like, think of that venom, like that hot pepper, that hot Mexican pepper, that Cajun pepper, that burns. It'll kill you. But this anti-venom, just imagine injecting yourself with some of that practical philosophy and practice, and it just instantaneously, like cortisone, just your throat stops constricting. You can breathe again. You can even bring some Votan as into it. Votan as relief, like that. Break that venom out. All of a sudden, that burning sensation goes away. That anger is gone. It's been neutralized. Somebody should patent that recipe, but I'm giving it away for free. Put it together, people. You've got to inject yourselves. It's the only way it works. And how do I know? Because I'm like a dog in the pepper patch. But I've got a satchel with me, and when I open it up, it's like, psh, it makes that psh sound. And in it is like the cartridge of a revolver with my anti-venom in it. I just pop that out. I hit a button, psh, and one pops up, and I inject that self-injection. And I do it when that burning reaches a fevered pitch. I know what I got to do, and I know where to look for. That's how you spell relief. That anger, that rage, that fury. Vote on Oz it out of existence.